No, I think so. I get the impression that he would probably talk about most things.
He may just look at you and be like, dude, it was the 70s. You think you're the only one
Exactly.
out there?
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
you think
my
you're the first person to approach me about this? That stupid 23andMe has been the worst thing that's ever happened to my life. You know how many kids I have out there?
He's probably thinking, Derrick, do you know what the probability is that I'm going to find out more kids whenever Amazon does a sale?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to my very first podcast on my own, separate from my other podcast. If you haven't checked it out, Two Honks and Kevin, go check it out. It's a lot of fun. I've been wanting to do a podcast on my own for a while. And when I was thinking about my first guest, there was one person that was in mind, someone that I've talked to a lot about the podcast world. He's looking to do his own podcast as well, so that's exciting. But more than anything, he's had some incredible news recently in his life, and we'll eventually get to that. But I'm talking about my cousin, Derrick Graves. He is joining me here. Hi, Derrick. How are you, buddy?
Hello, brother / cousin.
Yeah, there you go. Derrick and I have we've had a pretty close bond throughout our lives. I've been very fortunate to have some really good cousins in my life, and he's been a little bit more than a cousin. I've called him my big brother many times. He was the best man in my wedding. I was the best man in his wedding. He took me in at a time in my life and allowed me to live with him and his wife Vanessa down in Texas. So we've kind of gone through a journey of life together, and I would say probably I don't know, Derrick, what you say. I feel like in the last year or so we maybe have become a little bit closer, just because I think we've talked more, like more on the phone. And so yeah, so it's kind of gotten me to pick Derrick's brain a little bit more on on his childhood and stuff. He's had a totally different upbringing than me, and that's really what we want to get into. He's got like I say, he's got some pretty big news in his life recently, which we'll touch on. But yeah, so let's get this started. So Derrick, I've been trying to think all week like how I want to kind of lead into this, but I guess I just want to start off, if you just want to kind of give an introduction of maybe a little bit of who you are, where you came from, maybe a little bit of your family dynamic, and you can just kind of take it where you want. So yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Blake. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you again and to do it more in a technical format, I guess, as opposed to a purely impromptu phone call. Where we kind of cover about 1,000 different subjects in 18 minutes. It's always awesome, but yeah, now it's a little more structured. Where I came from, all that good stuff. Well, obviously I came from my mother, and I was already 9 months old when I was born. Those are jokes for your audience. They'll get it later. So don't.
This podcast is going viral for sure with jokes like that.
Well, we were all 9 months old when we were born, right? So
yeah, that's true.
Anyway, no. Obviously, as you just said, cousins. We are cousins that are close enough that we treat each other like brothers, which means we fight like brothers, but we have a good time doing all that fun stuff. But we've definitely had a lot of fun, a lot of great memories over the years. And I would agree with you. It does seem like, the last few years, actually, we probably have gotten closer just because adult happens, right? We're all trying to adult in this life, and we have all sorts of weird scenarios that unfold, and sometimes we make mistakes, sometimes we have triumphs, and we do tend to share those with one another. So it's always great to touch base, and congrats on your new adventure here, or your new venture, which I hope leads to an adventure with your podcast that you're doing here. And I think it's a great concept. And I know you'd like to have conversations with people and develop relationships. So I think this is right down your alley. So yeah, glad I could be your first victim. I mean, your first guest.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like the conversations, you and I have had, just me calling you on my way home or vice versa from work. It just, it allows you to dive a little bit deeper into someone's life. And, we all know each other, but we all don't know each other. Right. And I know
Yep.
like a lot of our conversations kind of lead to things where it's like, because I'm having this long form conversation with you, it's like I either say something or you say something, and then it hits me like, dude, I've never once thought about that. Like I never thought about maybe how your life was growing up, or how maybe you viewed my family and all that. And we'll go ahead and kind of get it out there. A little bit of what I'm alluding to is that one of the main things that was missing in Derrick's life was a father. He at a young age, and you can touch on that, but I'll give a little quick cliff notes, I guess. But from a young age, from what I understand, and go ahead, Derrick. From what I understand, um, was your dad around for a little bit of your life, or what do you know about the relationship of your father? Um, yeah, just go there.
Yeah. So I'll give you the version up until probably the last month or so. So we're talking about, I just turned 45. So we're really talking about the last 45 years in 2.5, 3 weeks of my life, right? I'll give
Yeah,
you that version and then we can take it to the next level here in a
there you
moment.
go.
But for that first version of my life, 99% of my life, I kind of had constructed the story that, obviously I was raised with my grandparents, your grandparents, Grandma and Grandpa Graves. They raised me. I was the first grandchild born into the family, born to my mother, uh, Wanda, who's your aunt. Um, and she was the middle of three children. So we have, our Uncle Larry that you and I share. And then we have my mother, and then we have your mother, Rita, who's my aunt. So that's the connection. That's the sphere, the universe we're dealing with here. Um, but when I was born, my mother did not, marry my father, and so she was a single parent at that point. And my grandparents wanted to help her kind of reestablish her life after having a child, and kind of give her a second opportunity, knowing that being a single mother was very difficult, even in 1976. It's always difficult, no matter your background. A single
Right.
mother is a huge challenge for anybody. Um, and so I always just kind of got the impression that my father was never around. No one ever made it appear as if he were a bad man, just maybe not the type of guy that would have been a good influence on me. That was kind of the gist of kind of what I was always told. Never given a lot of information at all about him in detail. Very few details. I'm talking, enough details I could count on one hand, if that. So having been raised with my grandparents, with my mother present, I did have a relationship with my mom, your Aunt Wanda. We were fairly close. She was in and out of the house. She would occasionally move out, maybe with a roommate, or, she later married another man, whose father, my youngest sister, Ashley. Um, but I always knew my mother, and then was obviously very close to my grandparents, who, were basically like my mom and dad. But as far as my dad goes, yeah, my dad was completely absent from the picture, and had never seen a picture of him, only knew his name, and maybe, like I said a few moments ago, just a few details, and nothing else, really. So that was always kind of a dark part of my brain. There were no memories there. There was nothing to illuminate that part of my life. But even though I may have been, technically, destined to be a statistic, my grandparents made sure that I had a good upbringing. They raised me in church. I had my Uncle Larry. I had your dad, Uncle Daryl. I had a good pastor. I had three sons. So I was always surrounded by male figures that were really good men, or really good young men that I could hang out with. So, I feel very fortunate and very blessed, even though, at the start of it, like I said, definitely supposed to be a statistic, but my grandparents and then my mother, they all kind of worked together to make sure I had a halfway decent shot at life. But yeah, nothing about my dad, really, nothing at all.
So did so basically your whole childhood was in grandma and grandpa's house. Do you ever remember living in an apartment with your mom or anything like that? Or was you, of course, I know you don't remember, the first few months of your life or whatever, but okay, let's just take your first 5 years. Do you recall at all being a toddler running around? Were you always at grandma and grandpa's house, or do you have any do you have any remembrance of, do you have any remembrance of the struggle maybe that your mom was going through, because we talk about this all the time. Now that we're older and now that we have kids of our own, you realize the struggle of a parent. So when you think about your mom now, you're like, okay, she got pregnant by a guy. It didn't work out. He leaves town. She's not stuck with a kid, but she has a responsibility of a kid. She's got, she's got to go work. So there's a lot there. Do you recall anything in the back of your mind from that first, let's just say 5 to 10 years of your life? I know that's a big gap, but that first 10 years, do you recall, what do you recall?
Yeah, so the short answer would be yes. I only remember being with my grandparents inside of their house, and I only remember their house at 1819 Knox Street, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46237 to be exact. I'll never forget those details. I do see pictures periodically when I was a toddler, and we were located at the old house on Charles Street, closer to downtown Indianapolis, but I don't really have memories of those moments. I just have memories of the house on Knox Street. I do have a few memories of, my grandfather, playing with me in the snow. As everyone knows, Indiana can have a lot of snow during a given winter. And so one particular snow, I was still probably a toddler, and he dug, a big hole and kind of dumped me in it. And I remember being bundled up for some reason. I just recall that image in my mind. So my grandfather was always around, always kind of letting me do things around the house, showing me some stuff, would always talk with me. He was a very mild-mannered man, very gentle man. So I was glad to have that aspect in my life, with the possibility of maybe growing up to be an angry kid, having a grandfather that was meek, strong in his own way, but also very meek and very humble and loved people. That really helped out my mind and heart, developing me as a young man to kind of take on some of those attributes. So he was a really good guide. So I do have a lot of memories, but they're just mostly probably from that 5-year-old to 10-year-old range, honestly.
Do you feel at all during that age that you were missing a dad? Do you feel at all wondering like, hey, where is he? Why, especially you may see like the relationship, Janae and I have with our parents or whatever. I mean, do you recall that at all? Or did you just feel like I'm good? I got grandpa, I got Larry, I got Uncle Daryl, I mean, did you feel like you were missing anything?
So definitely more of the latter.
Mm-hmm.
When I think, and this is why I do feel very blessed or very fortunate growing up, is I don't recall comparing myself to other people a lot. Other people meaning another kid in the neighborhood that maybe had a dad at home, or with the Dailies that we all grew up with. That was our pastor's family. He had 3 sons and a daughter, and I was always over there. So it'd have been very easy for me to compare. Here's a dad that's at home. He's got 4 kids. Why don't I have the same? I just never really remember getting caught up into that because I was always kept busy. My grandparents always kept me busy doing stuff. And so I really feel like I was fortunate for that type of situation, that type of scenario. I know it doesn't happen for everybody. And so that's why I might be more the exception to the rule, but I don't remember comparing myself a lot. Later on in life, obviously that changed. But as a kid, I just remember playing GI Joes, Legos. When we
Just
got our
being a kid.
first, yeah, just being a kid, we got our first
Yeah.
VCR. So I wanted to watch videotapes, and we got our first Nintendo, the original Nintendo. And my grandmother played Nintendo with us, which was very abnormal for her to do something like that. So I just always felt like that was my family. That was my mom and my dad. They were just much, much older than everyone else in the neighborhood. They had a mom and dad at home.
So I'm focusing on your dad. How would you say your relationship with your mom was kind of during, I think we're highlighting the first 10 years, so to speak. I know that's hard to remember, 30 years. I don't even remember what I was doing when I was 10 years old, but it's, which I find amazing because, I have kids as do you. And it's like each age they get, it's like I try to remember what I was going through at that age, and
Mhm.
it's just so hard. And it's like, some of the things that we may get onto them for, or even, encourage them to do or whatever. It's just like, it makes you really wonder how much do they, how much do they remember? How much do they, I've said this about my dad. I go, Dad, I don't remember throwing the ball with you in our front yard. And I know we threw the ball like
Oh
a
yeah.
thousand
Oh yeah.
million times,
Oh
so
yeah.
I don't know why. And maybe it's just memories that, for whatever reason, you can only, your brain can only take in so much. And, maybe one day I'll start reminiscing or whatever,
Mhm.
and remember those moments or whatever. But, but I know it was there. So anyways, that's kind of long winded there, but so, yeah, well, I mean, cause yeah, I'm just gonna stop right there and just say, how was your relationship with your mom?
So overall, I'd say my relationship with my mother was really good. Um, she was around and we would do things together from time to time. So she was never absent from my life at any
Mhm.
significant period of time at all. She eventually moved out. As I mentioned, she had married, my youngest sister's father at some point around the mid '80s. So she,
How
was
old
in
were
her
you
own
then?
home. Oh, I was probably around that 9, 10, 8, 9, 10 age
Now,
range.
do you remember that? Do you remember your mom getting married, a new man, and all that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's where memories really start, coming back into play, and I can vividly remember certain, activities or um, situations or problems that my mom had, or problems she had with her husband at the time, my younger sister's father. His name was Joe. Yeah, I start to really remember those things in more vivid color, um, because that was a new turn, in my life, a different direction. Though I did not live with them, I'd stay a weekend with them periodically. My youngest sister and then my middle sister Jada would stay with, my mom a lot more frequently. I always wanted to be with my grandparents. I just had a bond with my grandparents and felt like they were my mom and dad, and their house was my home. So I really didn't strive to be with my mother as much as possible. But
So
we would
so
hang out and do things.
so Jada, you just mentioned your sister, my cousin,
Mhm.
my big sister.
Shout out to
Um,
Jada.
yeah, Jada Black, we love you. um, um, so she was living with Wanda, Joe, and was Ashley around at that point?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I didn't recognize that. I thought she was living with you and grandma and grandpa. She
Well,
eventually did, right?
no, she spent most of her time at my grandparents' house up until a certain age, and then I think as Ashley got a little bit older, Jada, being a bigger sister, would stay more with my mom and her husband Joe. So she
Mm.
was around Ashley more often. I don't remember what age that was. I just know that at some point she started to spend more time with them. So she was less at grandpa and grandma's house, more with my mom and her husband and Ashley. Um, and then when she got in her teenage years, she would stay around grandpa and grandma's house more often. So Jay was kind of back and forth a little bit.
I need to get her on this podcast too.
Well, you
You're
need about
next.
3 days.
Dude, Jade and I will have so much fun.
You'll have plenty of material to talk about.
If our big ears can fit on both screens, we'll be all right.
Yeah, well, as long as everybody's got a 70-inch wide screen, you guys will be.
You're gonna have to telecast it on your big screen.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hey,
that's funny.
I thought of something funny. And just to put a little pause on this, I know
You're
your
good.
fans that would be listening to this will think, man, it's kind of herky jerky. These guys just jump ship and switch subjects. But you said something earlier about we took you in at a very, I don't know what your wording was, very pivotal age. I know
Oh,
life was getting kind of, big time for you because you were facing adulthood. And so you came out and lived with us for a while. And I immediately started thinking, like, what would be a good analogy to use to describe us taking Blake in? And I was picturing like a little cat coming in, a little stray cat. We give a little bowl of milk. And I was going to say something like that. And then I remembered that we had consumed so much cereal and milk once you got
oh
here to Texas. We actually considered buying a cow and keeping it out on our deck. just to go milk every morning.
Dude,
So we have stopped.
we destroyed some cereal back in the day, brother. We did. I remember that night so much. We got to laughing so hard thinking about putting a cow on your little apartment
Yes. Yes.
porch or whatever you call it.
Right.
Oh my gosh, dude.
And we were on the first floor. So theoretically, it was possible to do that, right?
I mean, just out there milking the cow. Derrick, how much you need for your bowl of cereal?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I'll
Yeah,
take
man.
about 15 squirts this morning, Blake. I got Wheaties. I need a little extra. Suck up all the juice.
Yeah. All that whole wheat just sucking up all the milk.
Man.
Oh man, dude, that was such a good time. Yeah, those are some of the times I like to go back on too, and just kind of like pause and just think about like what my thoughts were in that time of my life. And for those listening, I mean, I know it was after high school. I'm trying to remember. I think I had a couple jobs fail. I remember I was kind of in and out of a relationship with someone, and I think I was just like,
Was that Bobby or Trent? I can't remember. Sorry. I'm sorry. I forgot it was 2020. I told you that's my bad.
That's between us, Bobby or Trent. I mean,
I can't remember all the guys.
If I'm going the other way, their name's not going to be Bobby or Trent.
Okay.
I mean, I'm picky with my names apparently.
Got you. Okay.
Crap. What was I saying? Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, it would be interesting to kind of think what my thoughts were, but yeah, I obviously appreciate you guys doing that. I mean, it was I always reference back to that because I'll tell people, yeah, I lived in Texas for a little bit, and then like I remember it just like changing me. It's funny. I know we're kind of off topic, but I remember coming to you and being like, so real quick, I went there because I had an electrician job that Vanessa kind of helped me get, and it didn't pan out at all. I was not made out for that. So I ended up working at Starbucks, which is so funny that I'm drinking out of the cup that I bought at that Starbucks.
Are you serious?
I swear, this is my favorite. And listen, I bought this cup. It's a blue cup for those that aren't watching us. And it says Starbucks on it, because I thought when I moved back to Indiana, I was going to end up getting my own apartment, and I wanted to have coffee cups. So I bought like 2 or 3 of these, I swear. So this is my, I didn't even mean to do this, but yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
So yeah. But I remember going to you and being like, dude, like, I'm not making enough money to like pay anything. Like I can't move out of here, man. Like I think you're kind of stuck with me. Like I don't know what else to do right now, so but I think I stayed about, what was it, like 6 months or 9 months or something like that.
Something like that. I remember after you said that, I immediately went and filled your car up and just kind of basically said, you need to head in the northeasterly direction, take 40, work your way to Memphis.
We didn't have GPS back there. I can't believe I even made it home.
Yeah, I think I bought you a Rand McNally map and highlighted your path. Said, "Good luck, buddy." Slapped you on the rear end and gave you a big old fat kiss.
Yeah. Here's a gallon of milk. Take that
exactly. And drink it quick; it'll spoil in no time.
Right, exactly. Oh man, that's fun, dude. All right, so let's jump up a little bit, I guess. I know you mentioned Pastor Steve. I know he was, probably somewhat of an influence in your life, but mainly because of the church you grew up in. I think it's, I was trying to decide where I wanted to take this, but we definitely saw some things growing up that we probably at our later years thinks was a little crazy. And I don't know if I necessarily need to go down that path with the conversation, but maybe talk about kind of your schooling years. You went to a Christian school. Yeah, I mean, just kind of talk about maybe that part of your upbringing, and maybe if you can kind of think of what your thoughts were, when you're preparing for your future and what you want to do in life.
Yeah. So I went to through the Indianapolis public school system up until the start of my 8th grade year. Went through several different, IPS schools, School 72, School 34, School 114, School 56.
So you were constantly going to different schools.
Oh yeah, they would change our school and buses to other areas because it was all about desegregating the schools and mixing neighborhoods, which had its pros and cons. I think it may have been well intentioned, but there was a lot of negative fallback because you were taking kids out of their neighborhoods, and it just, there was some good that came out of it, but there was some negative as well. I was a minority when I would attend school 56. So I would spend about 45 minutes on a bus every morning being shipped to the northeast side of town. And then the system would set up kids from that neighborhood and ship them to the south end of town. They wanted to
Wow.
have a certain mix of races within the public school system. And so those kids would come in to the south side of town and be, obviously a minority. I would go to the northeast side of town, and I was kind of a minority. So yeah, that was really interesting. But my
Yeah.
grandparents, go ahead.
Talk a little bit more about that. I mean, I guess, I mean, honestly, dude, I don't even think I even knew that you were being bussed around and all that.
Oh yeah.
So I'm assuming going to all these different schools, it's probably difficult to have a clique or to have a group of buddies. Did you have those relationships? I know you played a little bit of sports, but I always kind of felt like I was a little bit more involved in sports. And you can correct me on that. I don't know if you played in youth sports or not, but yeah, kind of touch on that, just kind of how you fit in. Like you said, you were a bit of a minority.
Yeah. So it's pretty simple. No is the answer to your question. Did I have those relationships, in the school environment? And no is one of the fallouts, the negative sides of the busing situation that occurred during the years that I was attending the school system. Like I said, it may have been well intentioned, but there had some negative side effects to it, and that was I could never really have friends that I was close to. I remember Charles Tucker, Murphy Green, Damon Turner was my favorite. They were all African American young
I
men.
was like, none of them sounded white.
No, they weren't. They were all from that
bet-
northeast side of town. And at some point, I was switched over to School 72 for middle school, and some of those guys were taken from their areas and then moved over to School 72. So I was able to kind of reconnect in 6th and 7th grade with them. But yeah, it was tough on everybody. It was not an ideal scenario by no means, but I could not keep those relationships because every so often they would.
It was impossible.
It was impossible. Yeah, they changed schools all the time.
Do you recall many fights or anything like that? But
Oh yeah,
with really?
Yeah, none that I was directly involved with. My official fighting record in school, I was 1-1. So
I would love to tell the story. I've only heard the story from you and Chris. I don't George Emery. Shout out to George Emery.
Hang on. Yeah, if George Emery were here, he would probably go ahead and give me another win in my win column, but we won't go down that path. But yeah, shout out to George Emery. He was definitely a big part of our lives growing up. He provided a million laughs for us. He was great.
I'll talk to George. I'd like to talk to George. That'd be fun.
I would too. Yeah, get his perspective all these years later. It'd be great. But yeah, just real quick, my fighting record. My first victim was Sterling Pickcock was his name. He was a redheaded kid that just really got on my nerves one day, and I pushed him and hit him, and he fell backwards, and it drew a lot of attention as if I was some big, superstar. I just got lucky because he got tripped up. If he had stayed on his feet, he probably would have whooped my tail. But he fell backwards, and it made it look like I knocked him out or something. I don't know. It was weird. And it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't like 3 weeks later. I'm feeling, pretty confident about myself because I had my first victory. And some other kid popped off with something. We go in the bathroom and we're going to sell it out like men, right? And this little dude.
You guys going to pee?
No. We weren't going to play swords or firefighters. We were going to handle it.
Was that Bobby and Trent?
No. Good old Bobby and Trent. Wow.
All right, carry on.
So anyway, we go in the bathroom, and so we're going to, fight it out, sell it like men, and use our fist as opposed to using our words or our intellect. And so I kind of get settled in my position, thinking that, okay, now I'm about to, win my second fight. And by the time I'm thinking that kid hit me with a left-right combination so quick, and I was stunned to the point that I just kind of.
Which one of you hit me?
He immediately multiplied himself into 4 different people. Like, my brain was,
I stepped into the Matrix all of a sudden.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what it was. And I forgot to duck backwards. I did not duck backwards. So his bullets, if you will, he hit me twice, left, right combination. And I literally did this. I took my thumb because I felt more pain on the lower right side of my lip. That's where he really got me. And I did this. I checked for blood, didn't see much. I looked back at him. I just nod, turned and walked out because I knew I was done. I
That's
was like,
it.
I'm already embarrassed. This guy's faster than me. I like my face the way it is.
Yeah.
He's not done a lot of damage just yet. We're going to keep it that way. And I
Yeah.
turned
Yeah.
and walked out.
That's when you just say, all right, we cool.
We
We
good.
even, like, you're good.
Did you
Yeah.
get all out of your system there, buddy?
Yeah, my
You know?
bad.
Yeah.
Now I know.
Yeah,
Now I know who's the alpha male of this bathroom. I'm
that's
gonna go
right.
leave
That's
before I
right. Yeah.
poop all over
So
myself.
I sharpened his pencils the rest of the year because he was the alpha male. So
That's funny, man. Good. It's good to know that my cousin roughed it up a little bit, you know?
yeah.
I don't have too many fight stories. I do remember, man, this was stupid. This was actually with a bunch of people from church too, which makes it even better. And I was
Well, you fought with
probably,
church people? Shocker.
well, I mean, dude, those are the best people to fight with. You
They
kidding me?
are. You
They
really get
are,
them ticked
dude.
off and they start talking in tongues. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I talk in tongues all right.
Yeah. Not the spiritual tongue. Not at
Nope,
all.
not at
No.
all. Not when
No.
I'm mad. No, his name was Jared, man. He went to
Hang on. This is
Grace,
not the
and
Jared from Subway, right?
no, he's in jail, but I do know him. So, or my mom
Oh,
used to work
that's
for his,
right. I
my
forgot
mom,
about
yeah,
that.
my mom used to work for his dad. So I literally remember pictures
How
when I
much
used to
did you
go to,
know him, Blake?
not that well.
Bobby and Trent? Well, or
No, dude, God. No, I'm not his type. Okay. I'm too old.
yeah,
That's
apparently.
so bad, man. Wow. What a what a path we just went down.
It's reverse.
Yeah, anyways, about me getting my butt kicked, basically. No, we were playing basketball and
Mm-hmm.
I went up and we were talking trash, or not, I don't know, just playing ball, right? And this dude, he's probably 5, 6 inches taller than me. He probably has 30 pounds on me. He's a monster. And I went up for a layup and he came up from behind me and shoved me when I'm in the air. And everyone that plays basketball, if someone intentionally does that, like you literally have to defend yourself. And I just remember going up to him and being like, oh crap. And I just like jumped up and I grabbed his neck. I just tried to like pull it. I didn't know what I was doing. And he just took me and just slammed me on the ground. And then my buddy Joey Inskeep came in and like got him off. He's about to knock me out and got him off of me. And I was just like, dude, I was not made to fight. And this was probably when I was like 20 or something, you know what I'm saying? But
Holy
yeah,
cow.
I mean, yeah. So anyways, that's really my only scuffle besides boxing with some like friends, like we used to box in my front yard when I was in high school and stuff, which I still can't believe my parents allowed us to do that. How stupid is that? I was out there just slugging each other in the face with boxing gloves on because we don't think concussions are a thing back in the 90s.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple of times I saw your parents eating popcorn, looking out the front window, watching you guys do it. So
yeah,
like Blake will learn eventually.
They were making bets on the side.
Oh yeah, that's probably what they were doing.
Yeah. All right. So not too many relationships as far as school or teammates or anything like that. So your big influences and circle of friends was 100% church, right? I mean, all throughout.
Yeah, I mean, outside of my neighborhood friend, his name was John Baxter. That was really it. Once we went to the Christian school that our pastor had started, it was all 99.5% was all about church and church people and church family and church friends.
So do you want to talk about that a little bit? I mean, just those high school years, the man, I don't know how I want to word it. Like you said, 99% church. Like, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but looking back on that, do you have any thoughts or any maybe things that you wish if you went to a public school that maybe you could have experienced, or are you the type of guy it's like, hey, this was my life, and I was with because in all reality you were with all your friends. Like, they're still your friends, they're still your right.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've definitely valued those relationships very highly, and even in later years as an older adult, I'm still very close to our pastor's sons. One of them married into the family, married your sister Janae, Justin, your brother-in-law.
Right.
Yeah, he was the youngest of the three brothers. But his two older brothers, Jason and Jeremy, I was very, very close, or still very close to them. Close then, close throughout all these decades now that we've been together. We were all basically together since we were in diapers. Um, so we still talk fairly regularly with each other, and check in from time to time and do the happy birthdays and um, likes on Instagram whenever there's family photos of vacations. So yeah, we're
That's
always in
that's
contact.
how we communicate now.
That's right. Yeah, you don't have time to talk to you, but we'll do a
I see
like.
you. Like I
Yeah,
see you.
I see you.
Yeah.
And that that's worth like 12 conversations on the phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Exactly.
um but yeah, no, I value those relationships. Our mutual friend in Louisiana, Chris Jones, who we grew up
Chris
with.
Jones,
Yeah, Jonesy.
my man.
Yeah, I mean, and we just talked like a week or two ago via
Oh, really?
text. Yeah, we stay in contact from time to time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I've just always valued those relationships. Great stories. So you asked the question, did I want to go down that path? Well, we certainly don't have enough time to talk about everything, the pros, the cons, the highs, the lows, because there are many.
Right.
But to focus in on one element of what you said, um, did I feel like I missed out on anything versus maybe the traditional public school experience? And honestly, I really don't feel like I missed out on anything. We didn't do a prom because we weren't going to be dancing, that type of thing, but we got to travel the country and go to big international competitions with other Christian schools that were in the same organization that we were in. And we went to Arizona and Tennessee and Purdue, Dallas, Texas. My first trip to Dallas. Little did I know that I'd wind up living here at some point, but we got to travel, and that was great. And not every high schooler gets to have that type of experience.
Right.
So on balance, I think it was a much better situation for me to go to the Christian school, because as I was entering my 8th grade year, I was not in good shape academically. I was significantly deficient in many areas. And so by switching to the private school, I was able to get a lot of attention um, uh, put onto the basics that I was missing in the public school arena. So yeah, I mean, it was challenging at first to kind of have to be told, hey, you're struggling in this area. Your diagnostic test, shows that you've got deficiencies here, and we have to go back to 3rd grade and capture this concept, and then we're going to bump you up to 5th grade to capture this concept. So it takes a little while to go through that. But like I said, on balance, everything was much, much better as far as a path for me to travel. That was the way for me to go. And it was the insight of my grandparents and the vision of our pastor and his wife to start a Christian school. Whatever their motivations and intent were, I believe intentions and motivations were pure and honest and innocent. But whether they wanted to do it to keep us from the public school environment, or whether they wanted to do it just to have a Christian school, that they probably have 10 reasons why they did it. But I was glad they did it, because it gave me an opportunity to actually start learning and becoming a much better student. So I'm really thankful for that. That was a big transition in my life, and it pretty much put me on the path that led me to where I'm at today, because ultimately it led me to come to Texas, and then I find my wife, and I have a daughter, and have a life here that I absolutely enjoy. So yeah, I mean, those years were very formidable, even more so probably than my toddler and early elementary years, 8th grade through high school at the Christian school, most definitely.
So, sorry, I keep clearing my throat. Hold on a second.
Drink some of that tea from your Starbucks mug.
Yeah, I know, right? In my garage, it's a little chilly in here. I ain't gonna lie. So, um, okay, so I guess to kind of swing back a little bit on the relationship you were having with your parents in high school and all, even going into high school, like, did you at all like? Because look, I mean, we've kind of always made jokes, about you not having it sounds sad to say, like, we made jokes about you not having a father or whatever, but it always became kind of like this, man, you're looking a lot like your dad, or we just make stupid
Right.
jokes, right? Just throughout the years, for whatever reason, did it ever bother you? Did it ever become a thing, or did it never? Was because I mean, you always crack the joke as well, but
Oh yeah.
go ahead.
Okay, so to answer the question, did it ever bother me? No, I do not recall a time when I was truly offended by anything anyone said, if they were a family member or a close friend. There have been a few times in my life where someone who was a friend of a friend, maybe we're in a social gathering, someone that I know that I feel comfortable with would say something about my dad. Even my friends here in Texas, would joke with me about it because I always joked about it. So as they got to know me and we became more intimate in our relationships, they might make a joke or two, and I'd laugh and crack up, never offended by that. But I had an instance a few years ago where a guy was just kind of hanging out with us. He was a friend of a friend, but I didn't know him. And he made a joke about my dad. And I just looked at him weird, and it was all I could do not to challenge him and
Wow.
maybe, verbally, kind of go at him. And I didn't, but that was the only time I ever remember it bothering me.
So what
But family
what
and friends, no, I was never offended by what anybody would joke about or say.
so what made you think what why do you think that affected you so much when it came from him? Was it just because you didn't know him?
Because
And
I didn't know him, I didn't think he had a right to join in on something that was intimate to me, was an important detail in my life. And if I allowed others who I've been close to for so long to joke with that and be a part of that, who are you to kind of force your way into it? Now, he didn't mean anything by it. He was just trying to fit in, and a very nice, cordial guy. I've gotten to know him a little bit over the last couple of years from a distance. Really good guy. But that was the only time that I officially remember ever getting kind of perturbed by
Mhm.
someone saying something about me not having a dad, or trying to use one of the jokes that we use, from time
Right.
to time to describe, my life. But I don't think any family member uh, that we share, you and I share, has ever really, what I would call, offended me. And I must have a very high bar, versus maybe some others in a similar situation that would be very easily offended by comments being made. But it just never really got to that level.
Right.
So yeah, even though my bar may be high, I just never thought it was worth like getting mad over, because I'm doing it too. And I don't want to be a walking, a hypocrite about it. So join in the fun. If you don't laugh about it, it is sad. So I'd rather just laugh and have fun with it and just accept it, be good
Right.
with it, and then just move on. You know,
Right.
it wasn't a big
Yeah.
deal to me.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. I was kind of thinking about that today. I was just like, I wonder if we've ever, you know, uh, like we've said before, you're very fortunate to have male figures in your life, men. So you were, I mean, you had more men than you had, well, I mean, you had just as many women because you had aunts, that invested
Mhm.
in you as well.
Yeah.
Um, but you definitely had a good group of men around you to help build you, to help mold you to whatever, right? and
Oh, absolutely.
and and we've talked about that. Now that we have kids, it's like you view life totally different, kind of like what I was alluding to earlier. And when you watch your kid like develop and become somebody, you realize how important it is that you're there,
Hmm.
that you have the say, you have the way to mold them. You are giving them a little bit of Derrick, of your wisdom, of your character, of your
Hmm.
politeness, of the way you treat people, right? And same thing with
Right.
Vanessa, right? Like
Yeah.
we we watch these kids become parts of us, and it's such an amazing thing to see happening. um
It is.
so I think I want to ask you too, like how would you say your life has changed being a father? Because and we need to kind of get to a lot of what we want to talk about with this whole big news in your life of actually reaching out to your dad. But before doing that, um I totally lost what I was about to ask you.
Well, and I'll give you some time to kind of think about what you want to ask me, and I would like to say before we jump further, you know, the most influential people in my life, I mentioned them, at the very beginning of this conversation. My grandparents, and my uncle Larry, and my mom, and then your mom and dad. But I mentioned them in passing. But to really give them props, you know, a lot of the folks that may be listening to your podcast, to this particular session, many of them will know of my grandparents, or they'll know of my uncle Larry. A lot of them will know your mom and dad because they've already had experience with them, exposure to them. But there may not be many people that have had any exposure. They just know you in passing, or they're hearing about your podcast from a friend, whatever. But your mom and dad were extremely influential in my life because they gave me the idea, or I should say, the ideal scenario of a man and wife in marriage, having children of their own, and taking care of others as well. So that was a nice, a very important thing in my life to see on a weekend to weekend basis, because I
Right.
was with you guys a lot on the weekends. So to see your mom and dad go through their struggles, develop their marriage, raise their kids, that gave me a visual of what a good marriage, a good life could look like. And so a lot of times as I'm trying to raise my daughter, and then and in dealing with my wife, I do reflect and recall a lot of those times I was with your mom and dad. They've had their ups and downs, as any married couple that's been together over 40 years. They're going to have a whole encyclopedia of experiences they could talk about, right? But
Right.
seeing how they took us in, us being myself and my sister Jada primarily. They've also given help to my youngest sister Ashley from time to time, but they treat us like their own as well. And so
Right.
that was a huge element to my life, and a big um, I could say a big building block of who I
It's a big,
am.
big piece of the puzzle. It's a,
Let's do that metaphor. Yeah, it's a huge piece to the overall puzzle that I am, and that
mhm.
is represented by your mom and dad, and then that experience. Of course, my Uncle Larry, our Uncle Larry, and his wife Marcia, huge influences in my life. Having two uncles that are very similar in some ways, but in many ways are exact opposites in how they approach life and how they do things. That gave me a great perspective. It was kind of a bookend experience in my life to have one uncle that would see things this way and have another uncle that would see things this way. And it gave me a well-rounded perspective. And so that just really, I think, probably did more for me in growing up and seeing things the way I see them now than anything else, was having, those two guys in my life, on top of having my grandfather providing the meek, humble, friendly, cordial experience, and then having a pastor that was more of a firebrand. He was a hardcore, evangelical preacher that believed things, um, certain
Black and
way. A
white.
lot of things were black and white. And so I had all these great perspectives and these great approaches to life, and I could see, that's a good characteristic. That's a good attribute. I don't want that characteristic. I don't like that attribute about any person, fill in the blank with any of these names I mentioned. So I just feel like that enabled me to have a more quality experience growing up than maybe your average kid who's got a dad that's kind of so-so at home, maybe in the picture, maybe out of the picture, maybe a good relationship with his dad, maybe not, but just an average dad and average mom. All that said, I may be the exception to the rule, but the fact of the matter is, it does take a lot of people to raise a kid, and I had a lot of people help raise me.
That is very true. That is
Yeah,
so true, man. And that's, I mean, we've
absolutely.
talked about this so much, but you know, the older you get, you just realize how freaking fortunate we are. How
Oh,
fortunate you are.
yeah.
How fortunate I am. Like, so much of it is just the family you were born in, and the
Hmm.
struggles that they had, and the path that they laid, and the opportunities that they gave you. And it's just, I mean, I know
Yeah.
you're thankful for all those men, just like I am. I'm so
Hmm.
thankful to have an Uncle Larry, and even your mom. I mean, I've fallen in love with your mom the last few years. We've just been a little bit closer, picking her up and taking her to my mom's and
Oh,
stuff. I
she's a
mean,
hoot.
she's just so much fun. I love Wanda. um
Well,
okay,
and
so
shout out to my mom, because she
yeah.
always made sure she was around.
Right.
So she was not a deadbeat mother at all. She was not a
Right.
mother that, she had her struggles, she had her bad choices, she had her good choices, she had her ups and her downs, just like any person that's living on this planet. We all have a story to tell. She has a lot of
Amen.
stories to tell, but she never gave up and never stopped loving her kids. And I remember, she told me one time, she goes, "Yeah, I may have made some poor choices when I was younger, but if I had not made those choices, I would never have the knowledge, memory, or experience of you as my son."
That's right.
So that told me that my mom's perspective was at a high level. You know,
Mm-hmm.
she realized that maybe it wasn't the ideal scenario to have a kid out of wedlock, especially when my dad was married at the time, had his own family going. So it was one of those types of setups.
I didn't know
Um,
that.
yeah. Oh, I got lots of things to tell you.
All right. Yeah,
Um,
we haven't even gotten into the good
I
stuff
know.
yet.
Yeah, I know. Well, we may be about to do that. But yeah,
Yeah.
my dad was married, had two other kids at the time. He was married to a lady named Paula, and they were separated. And so he and my mom hit it off because they lived, a couple streets away from each other. They knew of each other, being kids in the neighborhood, growing up together and going to school together. Yeah, and so all of a sudden here I come. But my point being is, my mom just never gave up and just kept focused on being the best mother she could possibly be. So she plays a very vital role in who I am, who my sisters are.
Hmm.
But I can only speak for myself, and my mom has to be a part of that equation as well. I have to give her credit. At the end of the day, she gave me life in the mid 70s when it was probably very convenient not to have your child if you were having a child out of wedlock. So
Right.
she
Yeah.
chose life, and so she'll always be a role model to me because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Automatically,
agree, man. I
not just
agree.
because she's my
That's
mother, but
awesome.
she had a tough choice to make, and she
Yeah.
chose life. So
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
respect her anymore.
And she had a tough path.
Yeah, it was never
She
easy for
did.
my mother. No,
Yeah.
never easy at all. And
Yeah.
and bless her heart, she's retired now, and has made some friends in her retirement community, and still connected to the family. You just mentioned you guys get to see her a lot, but it's a rough life for a rough path.
Yeah. Okay. So I really hate to skip over kind of your college years and then obviously you meeting Vanessa and all that, but I do want to get to, obviously we've been talking about your dad a lot. Um, so I get a call from Derrick about, I don't know, maybe a month ago, and he says, "Go grab your wife and put me on speaker." And I was like, "Okay." And he goes, "Are you sitting down?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "No, are you really sitting down?" I was like, "Yeah, dude, what's up? You're scaring me." And he goes, "I found my dad." And I said, "What?" I got chills right now, bro.
Yeah.
Woo. I go, "You what?" He goes, "I found my dad." And I was like, "Tell me." So set it up. Tell me how you initially found him, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. So it, as most things in my life, it started with a woman. That's a joke.
Oh God.
Thanks, Mom.
Joke
Um,
number two. All right.
I came bearing good gifts.
We're only like an hour in, we're doing all
Yeah,
right.
I know. Like the wise men from afar, I come bearing gifts.
My God.
Um, so my sister Jada, who once again, if I don't give a shout out to my sister Jada,
Dude,
she will let me know about this.
she's counting how many times we mentioned her name.
I know she is, and she's counting also the minutes it takes for me to get to this. But Jada, I love you. You're the best sister ever. Thank you for hosting us last month when we visited you at your place in Cleveland, Tennessee. You're awesome. You're the best sister ever. Um, but in all seriousness, no, I do love my sister Jada. She's great. We're very close. We have a unique story, and so we share a lot of those details that only we know about growing up
We,
in the
I
life that
guess
we
we
grew
have.
up in.
I guess we haven't mentioned that Jada is in the very same situation as Derrick, where she
Yeah,
has
different dad.
never, yeah, different dad, and never met him, from what I know. So,
Right,
um,
right.
and
So yes,
go ahead.
my dad is different from Jada's dad, and my dad and Jada's dad is different from my youngest sister's dad, but we all have the same mother. So I hope that paints a pretty good picture in
God,
people's
dude,
minds.
you're killing me with these jokes, bro. They get it.
Same
They
mom.
know how it.
We
They know
got we
how it
got we
works.
got different daddies. Yeah. So when my mom said my baby's daddy, she means my baby's daddies. My baby's daddies. I don't know what the plural of all that is, but I got baby's daddies.
Baby, yeah, I got baby daddy problems.
Yeah. So yeah. So my sister Jada, I think it was going into the fall of 2019. So just a little bit over a year and a half ago, she says, "Hey, I'm doing this 23andMe thing, and I want to try to find my dad." I'm like, "Well, cool, awesome. Why not? See what could happen." So she does the test, gets her results back, and immediately her husband Ryan, who's the best brother-in-law ever,
Shout out to
um,
Ryan.
shout out to Ryan Black. Amazing guy. Love him to death.
I want you on the
Um,
podcast too.
I know. Yeah. Oh, he would be a hoot to be on the
Oh, he'd be
podcast.
great.
Ryan, let me tell you something, buddy. If Jada hadn't married you, I probably would have. I'm just saying.
Whoa.
Wait, is
Okay.
that too much? Did I
Hold
cross the
on.
line there?
Bobby, Trent, and Ryan. I don't know if Trent
Okay.
was the name you said earlier,
I mean,
but
is it
whatever.
possible to have a man crush on your brother-in-law? Has that
Hey
ever
man,
happened before?
he's a great guy. We
No,
love him.
he is. I love him, and I hope he's getting embarrassed whenever he hears this. But he immediately got online with some folks and started DMing them through the app, the 23andMe app that Jada had on her phone, because he was like, "Man, we got to know something quick." And Ryan's very aggressive when he gets, he's like a hunting dog. When he gets a scent of something, he's going to tear into it and take off and get it done. So he starts making these contacts almost instantaneously, from what I can remember. And Jay was able to quickly find, I believe, a cousin of hers who led her to discover that she has a half sister. This half sister had a very negative response to Jada's outreach to her. So that didn't go well for my sister, unfortunately. Jada also found out through the course of talking with some folks on her family side that she has a half brother as well. I don't think he really wants much to do with the situation. So they were trying to find out, my sister's dad. So she finally was able to determine who her dad was, and talking with her cousin and trying to talk with her half sister. Someone on my sister's side of her dad's family sent a picture of him. So she's able to actually get a picture of him. Unfortunately, she found out that her dad had passed away about 3 years prior. So probably around 2016, 2017. But he was the gentleman that my mother said, he was, she had a
Yeah.
name. And so that was true. My mother never lied to us about anything that we know of. My
Right.
mother's always been honest about everything. And so that was an unfortunate experience for my sister, and kind of tough on her in a way. But I think she was able to piece enough information together to where she realized that maybe knowing her dad might have been a negative thing, because by all indications, his own children really did not acknowledge him or accept him as their dad, or whatever. So there was definitely some really bad vibes coming from that. So I think, my sister was able to find some level of closure. Maybe not the Hollywood story that most people would want, for sure, but that started by using the product 23andMe. So a
Right.
shameless plug for 23andMe.
Yeah,
It
they're
works.
sponsoring. They're sponsoring this podcast.
They're sponsoring this podcast. Well, they
The
should.
first one.
Yeah. So my wife, about the same time that Jada decided to do 23andMe, my wife was like, "Hey, babe, I think you should do it. Why don't you do it and try to find your dad?" So I was like, "Oh, well, maybe, but I don't want to pay $200 for it. I'll wait till it goes on sale." Because that's the type of guy I am, right? I never pay full
Yeah,
price for anything.
that's hilarious. Who waits for a sell on 23andMe? I didn't even know that was an option. You're like
Yeah,
on
no,
Groupon. You're trying to find a discount.
yeah. No, I waited for Amazon to do like their half off sale. So as soon as they put out a $99
God,
23andMe
hold
experience,
on.
hit,
You
buy,
you
purchase now.
you can get 23andMe through Amazon.
Like, you can get everything through
Oh
Amazon.
my gosh, dude. Amazon done taken over the world.
Oh yeah, I mean it's the Antichrist, but hey, you know what? We use it, so
Hey,
I'm
who
just
cares?
kidding.
I get my toilet paper quick. That's all I
It
care
doesn't
about.
matter. I don't care if the Antichrist. They'll still sell me a Bible if I order one. So
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just kidding. Sorry,
I
Jeff
know.
Bezos, whatever his name is.
I'm sure he's listening too.
Oh, I
Um,
guarantee he's involved in this podcast. Yeah. So I decided to go ahead and do that, and so I kind of did the whole sample thing, because they want to collect your saliva, so you got to spit in this little tube and seal it up and send it off in a certain amount of time, and then it takes like 4 weeks to get results back, and then they feed all the information through your app, and they give you all your DNA, all the pros and cons, that tells you what you're probably experiencing with your DNA versus others, and certain traits that you may carry, and probabilities that you might be able to do this or do that, or you might experience this or that. So it's a very detailed report you get. I mean, I was very impressed with the product, and I highly recommend it, especially if it's half off on Amazon. So I got my results back, and
right.
immediately I started checking to see, like scrolling through any names that I recognized. And my dad's name was Danny Mills, according to my mother. So I was looking for Mills, and it like connected me with 200 something people from that
Oh,
side of the
wow.
family that had already done it over the years. And none of the names stood out to me. But, my sister obviously showed up, and she had the highest percentage of shared DNA. And then one other lady showed up. Her name was Charmaine. She showed up as my first cousin, and it was like 5% DNA share. So I thought, okay, if I ever reach out to anyone, obviously I'd start with her because my sister doesn't know my dad, which is weird when you say that out loud. My sister does not know my dad. Oh, that's because we had different dads. Anyway,
You don't know your dad.
yeah, I don't know my dad. Why would my sister know my dad?
Yeah.
My dad's not her dad, so why would she know? Her
Yeah.
dad's not my dad. Why do I know about her dad? Um,
Oh,
yeah,
what
and
a
we're just
mess.
letting people know about our sick sense of humor about all this, but
Yeah, I know.
type of jokes that we share. Um, so I sat on it for like over a year. So we went through, 2020 with my results. I'd occasionally look through 23andMe and read something. I didn't pay any attention, but I always saw Charmaine's name and thought, yeah, I'll reach out to her if I'm ever, ready to do so. And then, speed through 2020, which was a horrible year with COVID and all that fun stuff that we experienced last year.
Right.
Um, Fast forward, what would that be? Early part of March. So this is April 1st, 2021. So around March 6th, 7th, something like that. I'm sorry, let me back up. I need to get the actual date because it's the only way it's going to keep me straight here. It was the
Okay.
first Saturday in March, I believe. I woke up early in the morning just because I had a lot to do that particular Saturday. It was March 6th to be exact.
Okay.
And kind of woke up out of the blue before my alarm went off, thinking about the errands I was going to run that morning. And then for some reason, I just thought, I'm going to look at 23andMe. I haven't looked at it in a while. And I opened it up and I look and I see Charmaine's name again, right underneath my sister in my profile of people that I'm, closely connected to
Right.
DNA wise. And I just said, you know what? I got a little bit of time here. I just felt a prompting to go ahead and send her a message, stronger than I've
Right.
ever felt before.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's a whole, another story behind promptings and things, and we can get
Right.
into
Right.
that later. But that's usually how my life is. It's how I know there's a God, or why I believe in their God, because about 4 or 5 times in my life I've had strong promptings, and it's always been perfect timing. God's always
Mm-hmm.
doing something, and it's discernment or promptings, whatever you want to call it. It's just there's just something there how God gives it me. Other people hear voices, or they find God through nature. Mine is always a prompting of some sort that's
Right.
strong and unusual.
So
So I
so
sent her a
March
message.
6th was the
March
day.
6th.
March 6th was the
That was
day.
the day. Yeah, that was the day that started all this. And so now we're going to get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
So I sent her a message, and I basically kept it to 2 short paragraphs. And I just said, hi, introduced myself, referenced that she was my cousin, and just reaching out because I'm looking for my father. And I provided 3 or 4 details. I gave her his name, his location, the time frame that I was born, my age, when I was born, my mother, who my dad might know in my family. And I had a particular detail that I wanted to share that would be a good differentiator. And that was my Uncle Larry, our Uncle Larry, worked with my grandfather. So my father, Danny Mills, had a dad named Ben Mills. And Ben Mills had worked with my Uncle Larry at the Nabisco factory in
Wow.
Indianapolis, which was originally called Standard Brands,
Mm-hmm.
and later changed to Nabisco. Then Conagra went through a different naming structure a few different times, but it was Standard Brands back in the day. My Uncle Larry worked with him. Those are all the details I had about my dad, and I provided all those in the direct message I sent her through the app. So you fast forward 3 days, Tuesday afternoon ish,
Mm-hmm.
which would be what's that, the 9th? Yeah, so about 3 days
Yeah.
later, a little bit over 3 days, I get a response from her, and she introduces herself. She acknowledges my text, said that she spent a little bit of time researching, trying to verify my information, talked with her mother, who then put her in contact with her aunt Stella, I believe, who's
Mm-hmm.
the last living relative on my grandmother's side, on my dad's side of the family. So it'd be my other grandmother.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. So she's
Yeah.
still alive.
No, that
Oh,
grandmother died, but her name
okay.
was Edith Hornsby. And so the last sister of that family, which would be my great aunt, is still alive. She's 85. But my cousin was
Wow.
able to talk with her and provide this information to her. And she had come to find out, she had my dad's number and reached out to my dad and said, "Hey, Danny, I just talked with Charmaine. She has this information. Do you know a Derrick Graves from Indianapolis?" And apparently, my father's response to Charmaine, as she's explaining this in her direct message back to me,
Right.
is he said he does know you, hasn't heard your name in years, and here's his cell phone number, and he wants you to
Wow.
call him. And so within 3 days,
Just like that.
just like that, I have a phone number to this guy who says he's probably my dad. More than likely was his name, or was his quote. More than likely, I'm his father, if it's the
Wow.
Derrick Graves that I'm thinking of. And so,
Can you imagine him receiving that
oh,
phone call though?
yeah, that must have been wild as well.
And how
Um,
awesome it is that he was so responsive.
oh, I
He
can't
was
believe he
so,
actually would give his number out. That's what blew me away.
yeah.
So as I'm reading this, maybe this little TMI, but I was actually on the pot at the time I got the message. My afternoon, break.
Doesn't
Um,
surprise me at all.
no, no, no. I mean, timing, right? Timing's everything. So, I
Oh,
had a
I
few
got
moments
15
to,
minutes to
I
scroll
got
through
15
emails.
minutes.
It's like the dirtiest place to be on your phone, but we all do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, we all do it.
It's our,
Anybody listen to this, you do it too. So don't get all
yeah. Hey,
judgy with me.
it used to be a newspaper, so nothing's
Exactly.
changed. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Nothing's
yeah.
changed.
Except for you left the newspaper there, but whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
throw it in your
except
pocket.
except newspapers at our church weren't newspapers; they were the Singing News. That's an internal joke for Jeremy and Jason Daly. We
There
wouldn't
you
read the
go.
newspaper, but we'd read the Singing News,
Oh my
um,
goodness.
or CCM when we got older, which was Contemporary Christian Magazine.
Yep.
So I found my dad and
Yep.
got his number, and so I immediately told my wife, and she's like, "Call him." He
Yeah.
provided his number. No pressure now, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. So she was like, go big or go home. This is your
That's what's
chance.
up.
Call him up. And
That's
so,
what's up.
I couldn't wait to end the workday. And I was just thinking of some things. I did call my mom and my uncle Larry just to verify information that I had and say, look, is there anything else you need to tell me? And that's really all that they had. And I had it written down. And my mom did give me a few extra names. She goes, here are the names of his siblings. If he mentions all these, it's more likely your dad. And so
Yeah.
my plan was to call him and just make him feel like, at ease, and just say, hey, something like, I just want to verify some information, if you will. And based on your responses, we can continue the conversation if needed, right? Because I didn't want to talk with the wrong guy.
Yeah.
And Blake, oh my gosh, dude, as soon as I dial up the digits, like at 5:05 that evening, as soon as I could clock out, I call him up. He answers. I said, hi there, I'm looking for Danny Mills. He says, is this Derrick?
Hmm.
And maybe Charmaine gave him, a heads up
You're,
that I'd be calling
yeah.
that evening. I don't know,
Yeah.
but maybe he saw my number. I do still have an Indianapolis number. So it came up as 317. Maybe he thought, it was me just instantly knowing the area
Yeah.
code.
Yeah.
But he's like, hey, buddy, glad you called. And I was like,
Wow.
oh my gosh, I'm hearing the voice of my dad that I've never
Oh my
heard in 45
gosh.
years. Yeah. And
Dude, I get chills. That's
yeah,
crazy.
that was him. And I have a little note card with all the names and
Yeah.
scenarios, and he just started talking. And we talked a little bit about weather and the winter storm that came through Texas, in February, and we talked
Yeah.
a little bit about just life in general. But throughout the conversation, he was always checking off these names. He would just start mentioning people and locations and time frames, and I didn't even have to ask him a single question relative to "Are you my daddy?" because based on all the
Yeah.
information my mom and Uncle Larry gave me, he was checking these pieces of information off faster than I could,
And
put
it
a check in
sounds
the
like
box.
there was no doubt in his mind. I mean, he knew that his son was calling him.
By all indications, he knew, and which was an interesting, follow-up conversation I had with him. We kind of touched on that a little bit, but that initial conversation was pretty wild. But
Right.
the speed at which it happened was crazy.
Yeah.
I was blown away by the speed of it all.
Yeah.
Of course, it's modern day technology, right? I mean, you get contact
Yeah.
with
Oh
somebody
yeah.
across the world in seconds now.
Yeah. It's so
Um,
easy. So
yeah,
so take me down the path, I guess, a little, because I know you guys were texting. I know you said you sent a picture of the family, but you hadn't really seen them. And then you took a screenshot of you guys having FaceTiming, and you sent it to me at work. And dude, I don't know why, but I got so emotional. Like, I mean,
Really?
chill. Yeah, I just kept looking at it, and I don't know, I just kept thinking like how it had to feel for you, like, because it's not something it's not even something you really of course you thought about it, right? But like we've said
Yeah.
leading up to this, you've had men in your life to shape you. So in all reality, you didn't have that void, but still, like, to be at the age you are, and maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe that's why you wanted to go, I know we've kind of talked about that in our private conversations where, um, you know, like we've mentioned earlier, like when you have kids and you watch how they're being raised or whatever, it's like, you kind of start, well, man, I kind of want to see who the guy I might shape up to be, and
Hmm.
and maybe I can have a conversation with this guy and maybe learn something about my life or my health, or there's a lot that you can gain from meeting your father.
Oh yeah, and that was, yeah, that was my wife's biggest purpose behind
Yeah,
kind of, encouraging me to do it at some point. Because even years ago, she said, "Hey, just try to get to know your dad or someone in your dad's family because it may give you information about health issues,
yeah,
and that
that's
would
a
be
good
worth
point.
something, right?" So I always, kind of considered that once my wife started, encouraging me to do it. But you know what the one catalyst really was? It wasn't my sister doing 23andMe or my wife encouraging me to do it. The real catalyst to getting me to do this was having my daughter Jameson. She just
Yeah,
turned
man.
11 in February. And I remember when she was born, uh, either right before she was born or just after she was born, I remember thinking, man, it'd really be good to have a dad now, to have someone to talk
Wow.
with about that perspective of raising a little baby, this newborn who won't be long before she'll be a toddler. And then, elementary school and sports and all the things that she'll go through, to be able to talk about, those perspectives. And, you know,
Wow, dude. That just
that's
hit
what
me.
really got me thinking about it. I had not thought about it until then, until I was
That's
34 years of
interesting.
age.
It's like now that you have your own kid, you need a dad.
Yeah. That's kind of how I started to feel.
Yeah, you need someone to be like, okay, am I doing this right? Am I, and of course you've got Larry and my dad, and
Yeah.
grandpa's passed away, rest in peace. But like, that's interesting, man. It's just, yeah, that's an interesting thought
It,
right there.
yeah. Cause,
Huh.
we had a home, and I was doing some, remodeling on the inside, occasionally, painting and kind of fixing up the bathrooms. And then we put in new carpet, we get her room remodeled. And now we have this newborn, my daughter Jameson. It was just an absolute precious gift, from God,
Man.
and absolutely love her to death. And, having a dad would be great,
Yeah.
with all this, because it
And
could
to
have been,
share. And to
oh yeah,
share
and to share,
just,
because it gives her a grandfather. She
yeah.
has, my father-in-law, but to give her another grandfather would be great,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So that's what really got me going. So that would have been around 2010 when I really started thinking about, maybe finding my dad at some point. So that was the real catalyst at the beginning. But the lit fuse moment was, my wife saying, "Hey, it's time to do 23andMe. Do what your sister did and go find your dad." Okay.
Right.
Yes, ma'am. I do what my wife says. That makes me a smart
Smart.
guy automatically.
Smart guy.
So, yeah. Um,
So
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 I give her credit as well.
so let's dive into the conversation a little bit. I mean, you sent me a message of, like I said, the screenshot of your dad, and I immediately see the resemblance. Like I said, it kind of made me emotional just because I was, it's a big moment, man. It's like,
Yeah.
like I said, when you share a brotherhood with someone like we do, it's, I in a weird way, I was just like, yeah, like I was like, yeah, like he talked to his dad, like that's awesome.
Big
Like he's
deal.
still here. And even like with Jada, like not being able to talk to her dad. And I think I even said something to you about that. Like, I wonder if it bothers her, that, man, she didn't really get to, get that fulfillment, and, once again, I know she has had great father figures in her life, just like you have. So, she's been thankfully, taken good care of. And she's got a phenomenal husband, like we've mentioned. But so yeah, take us into that conversation. So yeah, so you sent me the screenshot and you said, dude, I just had a two-hour long FaceTime conversation with my dad. And I haven't talked to you since, because I was like, dude, we got to podcast this. So
Yeah.
an hour or something later, I'm
Finally getting
finding
to
out
it.
some of this news. So yeah, kind of just take me into like maybe kind of how it started, and were you nervous with some of your questions? And were you blunt? Did you just come out and say, hey dude, like, why did you leave? Did you ever think about me? Tell me the situation. What happened?
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll take that part that you just asked about and I'll mesh it with the initial conversation, because all that kind of bleeds into the two conversations we've had via the phone. So it's been about a month now, almost a month,
Okay.
now that I found my dad and first talked with him. So I'll take those two conversations and mesh them into one. So to answer your question, I did not want to freak him out or make him nervous at all, because he was just some random guy, with a name, claiming that I was his son. So that's kind of awkward in and of itself, right? So the idea is, okay, let's just be calm and cool about it. No pressure,
Right.
non-committal, don't appear needy, don't ask for anything, just talk. And that was
Right.
my approach. And come to find out, it was much like talking to my grandpa Graves, because he's
Wow.
69 years old, he's retired. And so he's a much older man. It's not like I'm talking to a 31-year-old dad
Yeah.
that's, a dad of a toddler here.
Right.
I'm 45, he's 69. He's lived a full life, without me.
Yeah.
So it is talking to someone brand new. You share DNA, of course. He
Right.
has a title now, so he's more than just a name. He has a presence, a voice, a spirit, an attitude. You're hearing from him for the first time. That was wild. But in the process of talking with him, I didn't want to freak him out, and so we just kept it very, low level, superficial, nothing crazy.
Mhm.
But in hearing kind of his side of the story without asking, because he provided
Mhm.
so much information, so much background, my, I guess technically it's my inference. What I drew from what he was telling me was the fact that he was married, as I mentioned before. He was separated from his wife, Paula. He had two kids that were older than me, but he and my mom had a relationship on the side. And so when I was born, he was somewhat around. And these are things I found out after talking with him for the first time. I didn't know these details. The
So he
last
was
time
he
he's
was he was roughly 24 years old, and he
roughly
had
about the same age as my mom.
and he had
Yeah.
two older
Two
kids,
older kids. Yep. And they
and
were
then you were
probably 5, 7 years of age.
okay, and
And I was a
it,
newborn.
okay, and then he was divorced, or did he get a
He
divorce
was separated.
because
He was
okay,
not divorced from his wife, Paula. He later
okay,
divorced her. He divorced her in 77.
okay, and that was Paula's kids. Is
Yeah,
he
those are
had
the
the
two
kids
kids
with?
he had with Paula.
Okay,
Yeah, who was
okay,
technically his wife at the time. So he had, a side thing with my mom, got her
right.
pregnant. Here I am. But
Ta-da!
yeah. So if he had been king over a particular nation, so if he was King Danny Mills, I'd have been the bastard son who would not have a single bit of inheritance or right to the throne, right? So, but anyway, that's
Yeah.
just,
Okay.
we joked about that before about me being a bastard, and then I find out that he was married at the time. I said, well, this makes me a double bastard. So I'm
Yeah,
the
that's
worst
just
bastard ever.
yeah. I mean, dude, it's a rough way to come into this world,
I
I
know.
guess.
So,
I
like, I'm
mean,
not an average guy that's not married, knocking up, an average girl, and I'm just a bastard. No, he's got to be married and separated and have two kids, and it causes all
yeah,
sorts of mess. Yeah, way
that's
to
a rough
go.
that's a rough start to the road map of life, I guess. But
Yeah,
hey, you're
yeah,
here.
yeah. I'm here.
Um,
I made it. But what I inferred was he had taken the perspective that, look, I'm married, I'm separated, I got two other kids, I'm going to have to keep a low profile here. I've
yeah,
got another child from another woman, and it's 76. It's still probably frowned on a lot in those days. So he probably didn't want to necessarily be around a lot. I don't think my grandparents really liked him very much. So he probably didn't feel very welcome to be around the family.
right.
So it gave him all the incentive in the world to just lay low. But come to find out, he actually saw me when I was about 2.5 years of age. My mom would occasionally bring me around him because he worked as a mechanic at a station down the street from where they lived. It was like a Century gas station. And so he saw me. My mom would bring me over there a time or two when I was a toddler and up and walking around, and I'd go over to where the gumball machines were and play with
Do you
the gumball
do
machines.
you
And
remember that?
no, I don't remember any
Okay,
of that. No,
okay,
no.
I didn't think
But
so.
these are just things that he told me. because,
Okay. So
I
he
didn't know
remembers
he ever
that.
saw me. He remembers that. Yeah. So he
Dang.
remembers seeing me playing on the porch with my mom, as he would drive through the neighborhood, he'd stop by. My mom told me a story that she had forgotten about, but she had met up with him one day to see him, and she brought me with him. I was pretty much a newborn still. And she handed me over to him because he wanted to hold me, and I like just peed all over him, and I guess they laughed about it and stuff. So they were telling me these stories, and so I knew I was talking to my dad. He was the only guy on earth
Right.
that had this type of information,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
verifying everything my mom said. And so DNA wise, by all indications, we're related. So it just made sense.
And
Um,
let me ask you this before I
yeah,
forget, do you think you said that you don't think grandma and grandpa really liked him? Do you think that was part of the reason he didn't come around? Because I mean, obviously it's not a great situation, right? And as 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 you can imagine, grandma and grandpa was trying to protect Wanda in this situation, and you know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
I'm sure they were probably like, how close can we keep this guy? Because
yeah,
at this point, you're basically grandma and grandpa's. Well, not at that, I mean, yeah, you get my
yeah.
point, but
No, I do, and it's a good question. I I was never told about a specific incident that happened, but I was always given the impression my grandparents didn't like him, and especially my grandmother didn't want him around. Now,
okay.
whether or not she had that conversation with him and told him to scat, I don't know. Um, but that's not really the impression I got from my dad necessarily. Um, I think it was
So
more of a
you talked about
situation,
it.
a
You,
little
you
bit,
guys.
yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, and it's mostly I didn't ask him; he was just providing information, and it's me gathering the facts and filling in the blanks from maybe the grave story that I always heard from my mom or my grandparents. And it certainly appears as if because he was keeping a low profile because of the situation, um, he had moved to go work with his older brother, which is my uncle Jimmy Mills, in North Carolina, and was gone for 3 or 4 years. And
Okay.
so when he came back to Indianapolis, when the job fell through or it didn't work out or he didn't like it, whatever it was, he came back to Indianapolis, and our grandparents, grandma and grandpa Graves, and my mom took me and moved us to the house on Knox Street, which is a little bit further south toward that Beech Grove, Keystone and
Mm-hmm.
Troy area for those that are familiar with Indianapolis, south end of Indianapolis. So we moved. So when
Right.
he came back to Indy, going back to where his dad lived off of Charles Street, we were not there.
Right.
And he had no way of finding out. There's no social media, there's no cell phones, no
Wow.
GPS. How do you track somebody? And well, I guess that was 1979, 1980, roughly, and just lost contact.
Did he say that he made an attempt? Did he try?
He didn't say that directly. I think he maybe tried implied it that he made an attempt to try to look for my mom, because he mentioned that he didn't know where we went when he went back to the
Right.
neighborhood, and he said something about when he looked up Wanda, and I took that to mean that maybe he was trying to say, hey, I'll go over and see how Wanda's doing since I'm back in town, and they weren't there. Some other family was living there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was,
We
and
we
they,
all can imagine what that situation was like. Trying
yeah,
to
I
you
mean,
literally have no way to get a hold of someone, and
right, yeah, and
yeah,
he's still mid, or I guess he was late 20s then. You're
yeah.
still young guy that's going through issues. He did divorce his wife in 77, his wife Paula. And come to find out that was the only time he's ever been married.
Oh wow. So
So
he never
yeah,
remarried.
never remarried, no.
Wow.
So yeah, I've got an older brother and older sister from my dad.
Have you talked to them?
No, no, I
Okay.
haven't.
Do you want to?
Oh yeah, I would.
Do they want
Yeah,
to? Do they
I have
have
no
you?
clue. I haven't gone
No
down that
clue.
path yet. Yeah.
Okay.
um, I do have a younger sister named Christina that lives real close to my dad. So my dad lives just south of Raleigh, North Carolina. It's a little town about 20, 30 miles, it looks like, south of Raleigh, Durham. Town's called, I think it's pronounced Fuquay Varina. It's a hyphenated
Mm-hmm.
name. He tried to explain the story behind the name. I really didn't understand it, but it's basically two last names of the founder of that little town, Fuquay Varina. And my youngest sister, Christina, lives near him. And he had met another lady over the years that he lived with, and he and this lady had Christina. So my younger half sister lives near my dad in the North Carolina area, and my older half sister, her name is Trina. she lives in North Carolina as well. I'm not really sure what town she lives in, but she's not that far away from my dad. And then my older brother still lives in the Indianapolis area. So
Oh
yeah,
wow.
I would like to talk with them if they were open to it. Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
it would be.
Um, so it sounds like the conversation went good. I mean,
It did.
was there anything that was there anything that you maybe picked up on that maybe where he resembled you, or you kind of I don't know. I mean, did you take anything? I mean, obviously it was probably a joyous moment for you, you know, because you're literally having a conversation with the man that helped bring you into this world. But I mean, was there anything that you like when you kind of hung up? Well, I mean, I don't know if you can explain that feeling that of the ending of that conversation, and I mean, I'm sure you still have 1,000 questions to ask,
Mhm.
and I'm assuming you're probably wanting to um, ask those questions, or do you just want to kind of keep it at arm's length and just be like, you know, all right, we've established who each other are, you know, or do you want to try to pursue the relationship more?
Well, it's definitely in the middle of those two scenarios. I don't want to just be a distant, biological son that's 1,200 miles away that he just knows about, but there's no level of communication.
Right,
I want there to be something more, but I also know, he'll be 70 August 31st. And so he's lived a whole life without me. So it's really, to me, in the end, how much of a relationship does he really want? And I'll
right,
leave that up to him. He's the one that, has, you know, statistically speaking, less years than I have. So how does he want
right,
to spend those years? And does he have time for, another son that he's not seen in 43 years? So I'm open to really whatever, but I would like to, get to know my dad. And we've actually talked about that. And
nice,
yeah, so, and it's been very natural. I mean, he is not at a single point in time since I've originally talked with him made me feel uncomfortable at all.
really.
Yeah,
It's just
it's
been
been great.
easy. It's just been
It's
an
just been
easy
very easy,
conversation.
very easy. I could not have imagined it would be this easy.
Really,
That's what that the speed of it and then the easy nature to our conversation. Those two things blow my mind every time I think about
right.
it. But it's very much like talking with my grandpa Graves.
Wow, that's funny that
Because
you're finding.
oh
Now,
man,
I wonder if you're having those memories, he's reminding you of Grandpa Graves because your childhood father, for the most part, was an older man.
I think it's a great point, and I could totally see that being the case. Now,
Okay.
obviously, he is, you know, North Carolinian through and through with a lot of
Hmm.
Midwestern roots. So
Hmm.
there's certain things he'll say that reminds me of an older man like my grandfather.
I reckon.
Um,
I remember Grandpa always saying,
oh
"I
yeah, I
reckon."
mean, oh yeah, I mean, he'll use the phrase, "Well, I'll tell you what." Well, my mom uses that, and I
Yeah, yeah.
remember my grandmother using that. So there's just some
That's
things that
funny.
I know is truly from Indiana that my dad will
Yeah.
say. It makes him sound very Midwestern, and then he'll start talking, and it makes him sound very North Carolina like.
Right, right.
There are a couple things that we really hit off quickly when we started talking. He loves NASCAR, so we had a lot to talk about NASCAR,
Oh, wow.
and he's a big time GOP Republican, political guy, even though he doesn't consider himself to be heavily involved in politics.
You gotta ask him
Um,
if he knows my grandpa.
I did.
Oh, does he?
He
Did he
he
know?
thought he remembered the name. He could not remember a lot of the details, but he did say
Okay.
the name sounded familiar. And so I told him a little bit about, what your grandpa did, racing with Bobby Allison,
Right.
some of the greats. He tire tested for Ford Motor Company.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
went through all those deets. And so he remembered a little bit of that. But
Okay.
I think he was more of a fan of, I forget, Ned Jarrett, who was one of the
Oh, really?
racers. It was Dale Jarrett's father
Yeah, yeah.
and someone else. I don't remember the name. Your dad would know, but he went through all the drivers that he liked over the years and the various
Right.
tracks. And so, yeah, we hit it off NASCAR wise, pretty much. That was great. And then obviously politically, we probably, see things eye to eye. I could definitely
Really?
tell he's got an edge to him, meaning I don't think, and most of this is because of um, the time frame he grew up in. I don't think he tolerates a lot of foolishness from anybody. I think
Mm,
he's somewhat serious when it comes to work. Seems to be a guy that enjoys talking, having friends and family. But he doesn't have time for small talk when he's being serious. I kind of getting that
Hmm.
impression. So that's interesting, which is
Are
not
you like
necessarily
that at
like
all?
me.
I was gonna say.
If it's a serious situation, I might change a little bit, but for the most part, I would much rather keep things lighthearted, and I don't want to be confrontational at all.
Yeah, I
That's
agree.
not my nature. I feel very uncomfortable with that. So, um, but yeah, so just in talking with him, I do pick up on more of his characteristics, things I notice, maybe not necessarily that I see in myself, but just things that I pick up on that, oh, well, he's definitely this, or he's definitely like this, or this sounds like an experience that he's had before. And that's the reason he thinks this way. And maybe it's like psychoanalyzing my dad. I'm not really sure, but um, it's just interesting to hear him talk because I haven't heard him talk in 45 years, right?
Just hearing you
So
say, just hearing you say, my dad and my dad this, my
that's
dad
crazy.
that. It's like, dude. I mean, we've gone,
Yeah,
I've gone almost 40 years without you,
I know.
always, you just never had that figure in your life or whatever. But
Yeah.
man,
Well,
dude, it
it
still
was
blows my
funny.
mind.
That 2 hour phone call I told you about that we had last week. And it went well into the past midnight my time. He's on East Coast time. And
Okay.
so I didn't get off the phone, the FaceTime call with him, um, until after midnight my time. So it was over after 1 o'clock his time. Because
Wow.
he called me late that evening, just wanted to talk because I reached out to him early in the week and just, hey, want to have a follow up, want to talk about some guy stuff, NASCAR and hobbies and jobs. And he was ready to talk, and we talked for over 2 hours. It was great. And I asked him, I said, hey, what do I call you? Because I don't want to call you Danny. Yeah, that's weird.
I
I,
don't know, dude. It's weirder to call him dad.
I
I
know.
think.
He said, well, you call me whatever. They call me Papa here, but I certainly understand if you don't want to call me dad. But if you decide to call me dad one day, I'm fine with that too. So I was like,
Wow.
man, this guy's making it as easy as possible. I know.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, yeah, and kind of like what we talked about on the phone the other day. It's like you also got to think about his perspective and his, especially now that you're going to find out some little details. And look, who
mhm.
knows how hard he searched for you, right? I mean, me personally, if I had a kid out in the world, I'm finding that kid. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah,
not to judge him or whatever, but yeah, I mean, obviously, he had you in a rough in a not an ideal situation, right?
right,
So we can
right.
kind of we can kind of understand that, but
Mhm.
to get this phone call after 40 plus years, yeah, excuse me, 40, what are you, 45? Yeah,
I'm 45. Yeah,
yeah, 45 years later, I mean, there's got to be a little bit of I don't know, man. I don't know. Like if that was me, I think there might be a part of me. It's like, okay, as long as this dude doesn't want anything from me, like, yeah, let me build a. I know it sounds kind of bad because I would be their father, but
yeah,
they're not coming after money or
right.
something crazy. They just legitimately want to get to know me. I mean,
Mhm.
he owes that to you. You know what I'm saying? If
Yeah,
nothing else,
and I get the impression that he's okay with that. I did ask him last week. I said, hey, I called you out of the blue, and I don't know what that moment was like for you, but I want you to know that I'm sensitive to maybe I could have caused you problems, and hopefully I didn't create a scenario for you that you might face some blowback or pushback. 'Cause I wasn't sure if he was married when we were talking, if he had a wife at home that maybe was not
okay,
aware. uh, but that's when it led into he hasn't remarried since he divorced Paula in 77, and he lived with my youngest sister's mother. My
mm,
youngest sister's Christina. He lived with her for 20 something years. I don't know really where she's at. I do know he lives alone. He
okay,
lives on 1 acre of property in that town in North Carolina.
nice,
And he said, no, he said, you're absolutely fine. He goes, you don't cause me any problems at all. So
wow,
once again,
yeah, yeah, it's just
another,
easy,
check box that's like, I don't have to work very hard with this
yeah.
guy. And I think
Isn't it
you may have
funny?
mentioned, sorry to cut you off. You
No,
may
you're
have
good.
mentioned this in our phone call last week, but if you think about from his perspective, how long was he thinking about this?
Yeah,
Was it just something that he just pushed into the dark recesses of his mind
right,
and thought, well, maybe one day if it's convenient, or I never want to deal with that, or man, it would be nice to talk with Derrick someday. It
right.
certainly seems like, from the impression I'm getting from him, it's more the latter, that
Right. He's
he
excited.
was looking forward to an opportunity maybe to talk
Yeah.
someday, because he doesn't shy away from any questions I ask, though I'm not asking very heavy questions.
Right.
um, he willingly shares his thoughts and opinions about everything and anything really.
Man.
So it certainly seems like he's okay with meeting and developing a relationship with his son that he had with another woman in 1976.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it's
Man, dude.
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. Obviously, I'm happy for you. The family's happy for you. I mean, you know, I don't know if you needed this closure or if you needed this piece of the puzzle to fit together, but I mean, it seems right. It seemed like you said, it seems like the timing's correct, and it's just,
Yeah,
it's cool, man. I'm just happy that you're able to build a new relationship with someone. I mean, obviously it's your dad, so it's different, but I don't know.
yeah,
I'm just glad you know, um, he's so willing to talk to you and get to know you, and and like we just said, I'm sure he's had many days where he's thought about you. I mean, you have to, right? I mean, you
you
have
think.
to, yeah,
Yeah, you
and
think.
yeah,
And and over the years, I have, occasionally allowed myself to think about, wondering what my dad's like, what he's doing, if he's still
right,
alive, what's his career been, what the choices he made, does he have any other family? It's just, more general stuff. But it's only been in the last, 10 to 12 years where I really considered finding him. And then as quickly as I found him is what's just blown my mind. I'm still recovering from the shock of it all. Um, but very thankful, very grateful, that I had some folks encouraging me to do it, and now it certainly
right,
seems like it's paid off. And so, yeah, I did snap a picture of him when we FaceTimed, because we started with a phone call, and then he asked me, if I had. He goes, "You
yeah,
have an iPhone?" I was like, "Yeah, I do." He goes, "What's FaceTime?" And then boom, within like two
dude.
seconds, there he
Okay,
was.
okay,
That's crazy.
okay, okay. That's what I gotta ask you.
Yeah.
What was that moment like when it flipped and you saw your dad for the first
Well,
time?
yeah, and I had no time to plan for it, right? Because leading up to that, I thought, man, when do I ask him for a picture?
Yeah.
It's like, when's the right opportunity? Because I would like to get a picture, or whatever. And so he called me that night. I picked up the phone. We started talking, and we're about an hour into the phone call. And then he just, he asked me, he goes, "Do you have an iPhone?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I do." He goes, "Let's FaceTime." And then boom. And I had like maybe seriously 2 seconds to think, oh my gosh, I'm about to see my dad for the first time. What
Oh
I
my
do.
god.
And then there he was. I'm like, holy cow, it's my dad. And
Oh, dude, that's crazy.
then your brain is also reminding you he's seeing you as well. So don't look
Oh.
like a goofball, like oh, you're my dad, man. It's like, okay, act like you're
Yeah, yeah,
a 45-year-old
yeah,
man that's
yeah, yeah.
mature.
Try to make your dad proud at the age of
Yeah,
45.
yeah. I want to make my dad proud for the
Yeah.
first time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just basically said, oh man, you know
Good looking
this
men.
is. Well, that's funny because I did see him some pictures after we first talked. And I seen my professional snapshot from the bank, and I said that to him. And I did, because that has some Photoshop to it. It makes me look even better than I am in real life. So I'm
Yeah.
like, that's the picture I'm sending him. And he responds back. He goes, "Well, I certainly think you look a lot like me." And then I responded back by saying, "Well, Mom always said I reminded her of you quite a bit, and so you must be a very handsome man." And he goes, "Well, I think we both are." And so then I thought
Nice.
he would send a picture, but come to find out, he doesn't work the phone very well. And the night that we did the FaceTime was his first time ever FaceTiming anybody other than his granddaughter.
Wow.
Blake, get this
Dude.
sidebar. His granddaughter's name. Did I tell you about this?
Yes, go for it.
His granddaughter's name is Jada. I
Which is
could
your
not believe it.
which is your sister's
It was just
name.
my sister's name. So when
Yeah.
I told my sister, she got emotional. "Oh my gosh, I can't believe your dad's got a granddaughter named Jada." It's spelled the same way. And you just don't hear Jada a lot. You occasionally hear
Yeah.
it, but it's not a very popular name.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
what are the
yeah.
chances of that?
I know, man.
That's wild in and of
Yeah.
itself. So the
I
whole story is crazy.
I thought it was so cool too that like basically like the next few days after you talked to your dad or discovered your dad or whatever, you went and spent time with your sister. So I'm sure
Yeah,
that
we were on
was
our way 48 hours later, a planned
yeah,
trip to see my sister. So the
yeah,
timing of it was absolutely just
yeah,
beyond
man.
belief, how it worked
So
out.
where do we go from here? Do you want to go meet him? Do you want to go? I mean, is there talks of maybe you going
Oh
to
yeah.
see him?
Yep.
And
Yep.
he's
So
open for that?
I asked him in our initial phone call, we talked for 33 minutes, and I said, hey, if you're open to it, I'd like to, talk with you from time to time.
Dude.
He said, sure. He goes, call me anytime. I mean, he's
Wow.
retired, right? What else you got to do?
Yeah.
He said, call me anytime. I thought, well, that's nice. I appreciate that. But I didn't know if that was, genuine or whatever, because it's my first time talking to him. That's what you tell anybody, right? Oh, call me
Yeah.
anytime.
Right.
But then I said, and if the time is right and you feel comfortable with it, I would like to come and see you at some point and meet you for the first time, maybe have a cup of coffee or eat lunch together or something. And
Right.
he said, I would really like that.
Wow,
So
dude.
that was our initial phone call. And then when we talked last week, which I guess was about 2.5 weeks later, I asked him, I said, hey, we're thinking about going to the East Coast to a beach in North Carolina, conveniently, North
Yeah.
Carolina. We've been going to Hilton Head the last few years, but we said, well, why don't we try to make it easy for him to say yes? And so we're going to make our way to a beach in North Carolina. And I told him, if you don't mind, I'd like to stop by on one of those days and maybe, do our coffee or lunch or something. And I'll have my wife and
Wow.
daughter with me. And he said, come on. He said, you guys can even
Dude.
stay with me. I was like,
Dude.
oh my gosh, that's crazy. We'll
Hey,
save some
we're
more
gonna go
money.
By the way, you owe my mom some child support.
Well, that's what Jada asked. Jada, my
Just-
sister, she was like, well, did you ask him about why did he split?
Oh, she would.
And she's asked all these deep questions
Dude.
that only Oprah Winfrey would ask, right?
Yeah, only a woman would ask.
Yeah, only a woman would ask. And I'm like, I want to act like more like Dr. Phil. Are you kidding me? You're an idiot. I'm not going to ask those questions.
Right. You're just trying to get to know the guy.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to know the guy.
Man, that's cool, dude.
It's funny though.
Well, that's cool.
All these years.
So when's the trip?
So we're looking to go at the end of June. We're gonna go see Jade and Ryan for a few days again because they're kind of on the way, being in the Chattanooga area. And then James will be with us, and then
Why don't you take your mom? Why don't you take your mom with you? Maybe rekindle some stuff.
Blake, if I were to respond that how I want to, you'd have to make this an explicit episode.
I wish you would
be the big old fat E next to this one. Let's go,
bro. How great would it be? How great would it be if they got together?
HE to the double L. No
way, man. Why? Hey.
But you know what my mom said? My mom was like, your aunt, hang on, let me say this the right way. Your Aunt Wanda immediately wanted to know if I had a picture of him after I told her I talked with him.
Yeah, of course.
I'm like,
she's trying to slide in them DMs.
Oh, I'm like, Mom, don't even get any ideas. I said, we're trying to rekindle those old flames.
That idea that happened 45 years ago.
I know. She's got another great idea, I'm sure. I totally expected my mother to call me up and say, Derrick, I just got a bus ticket. I'm on my way to Raleigh, North Carolina.
Oh,
you got your dad's address? I can totally see her doing that.
Has he talked about Wanda at all? I mean,
a little bit.
Was there any connection? Any, has he been apologetic at all?
No, because I don't.
Not that you're seeking that.
No, I'm not seeking that. I don't think he feels like he has anything to apologize for.
Wow.
Just because.
Does he feel like Wanda screwed him over? Does he feel like Wanda took his kid and bounced?
I don't know, but he may feel that way. Now, I think time will tell. I might be able to pick up on something.
Those are questions.
I haven't asked those questions yet because that leads you down maybe a dark path that I don't want to travel right now with him.
Right.
I'm just trying to keep it lighthearted.
Yeah, that's good. But it sounds like he's open to discuss those type of things.
I think so.
Am I wrong?
Yeah. No, I think so. I get the impression that he would probably talk about most things.
He may just look at you and be like, dude, it was the 70s. You think you're the only one out there?
Yeah. Exactly. Well,
you think you're the first person to approach me about this? That stupid 23andMe has been the worst thing that's ever happened to my life. You know how many kids I have out there?
He's probably thinking, Derrick, you know what the probability is that I'm going to find out more kids whenever Amazon does a sale?
He absolutely hates Amazon
He
simply
hates
because of the
Amazon.
sell.
But
Oh
every
my
time they
gosh.
do one of those sales, I wind up with more kids I find out about.
I get another new phone in my another new contact on my phone. I've got 3 lunch meetings this week.
I know. It's like I'm
Uh,
way too much caffeinated with all these kids coming out of the woodwork. All these
yeah, for
bastards
real.
coming to take me for coffee.
Yeah, he's like, I need a beer. I don't need coffee.
Yeah, no.
All
Oh, he
these
doesn't drink.
bastards,
He
all
gave
these
up
bastards. Hold
all
on, dude.
these
You can't just say that. You can't just say all these bastards taking me out to drink.
all these
Oh my god.
bastards taking me
It's
out for
so
coffee.
bad.
He
Oh my
doesn't
bad.
drink. He gave up drinking years ago.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that real quick. How was his health? Did you sense he had
He still
any?
smokes,
Ah,
so I'm pretty sure his lungs are, probably look like a bunch of,
bunch of tar.
tires, bunch of tar.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, obviously that's a horrible habit and bad for you. But I mean, he seems very energetic and
Yeah.
talkative. Eh,
He was thin, like I mean, that's
yeah,
good for
he's not
you,
overweight.
to,
He's not
yeah,
obese. Yeah, that was encouraging.
yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at a almost 7-year-old guy. So, I
But
mean,
I mean, he reminded me of like Bud, my grandpa
yeah.
Bud,
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
just kind of of course, I'm going off of a, screenshot, but
Right. Yeah.
so,
Apparently he's dark complected. My mom always said it was very easy for him to tan. He was always kind of, darker skin,
hmm,
versus the average Caucasian, bright white look.
yeah, I got that look
Um, oh, you
for
do.
sure.
Yeah. You've always had a great tan.
Yeah, dude, I'm one shade away from clear.
Yeah. You are pretty translucent.
I'm like
Trans,
blending into
trans.
these white walls right now.
Yeah. Yeah. If you weren't wearing your Nike sweater with the orange square, I wouldn't be able to see you.
Whatever. So stupid. Oh, dude, man, let's wrap this up a little bit. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to say. I think I know you've kind of shown your respects to a lot of the people that kind of helped raise you, and
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you just want to kind of reflect on your life at this point at 45 and just I don't know, just kind of close this out. Just you can kind of say whatever you want. I mean, I don't know if there's anything that you want people to further know about you, or I mean, you may have nothing to say, but yeah, man, go ahead and kind of,
Yeah. I'm just, very grateful for, the life that I've had.
yeah,
Like I said at the beginning, I was destined to be a statistic. But it depends on how you want to define that statistic. Um, I just had a lot of people that helped out, and
yeah,
I just very grateful. I don't have many regrets at all.
yeah,
I've just for the most part made good decisions, and that has helped. Good decision making does help a person out in life quite a bit.
yeah,
Unlucky in some things, very lucky in others. The big things that matter. Got a wife and daughter that I adore, and um, great friends here in the Texas area that have helped me in my adult years, really encouraged me and developed me. Family back home, that I love dearly. Relationships, not just with friends, but relationships within the family. You and Janae
mm-hmm.
being very, very close. It is or has been like brother and sister type relationship,
Yeah,
and so it's always good to catch up with each other and pick on each other and tease each other and do all the things that we do whenever we get to reconnect, whether it be through video or phone or in
right.
person. So yeah, I just very blessed life, and now I get the opportunity to present to my wife, father-in-law, that she's never known, a dad I've never known, so I get to experience that, and
Is
my
she
daughter
excited?
gets to have a grandpa. So
Yeah, is
well,
Vanessa excited?
I think as excited as one could be,
Right.
for this type of situation. Um, when I talk with her about going to see my dad, at some point she was very open to all of us going and doing it, seeing that
Nice.
it was a big event. It needs to be a big
Yeah.
family event. And so now it's like, well, open up the purse strings. Let's do this, whatever it takes. I want to make it happen because, he's 70, he's not 32.
Right.
So,
Right.
he probably does have less
Capitalize on these
years.
moments. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. No need to wait
Yeah.
around, you know.
Yeah. How about
Um,
Jameson? How's she feeling?
I think she might be a little excited. It's hard for her to get excited unless it's anime or TikTok or softball or
Yeah.
basketball. Those are things that
Yeah.
excite
Yeah.
her. But I
Yeah.
think, just the idea of knowing that she has a grandfather that she's never met is kind of
Right.
intriguing to her a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Cause
I
yeah,
think she'll
she,
like the aspect more when she sees him and gets to go on a trip to go meet him. I think that would be
right.
really cool to her.
Yeah. And I'm sure once she gets a little bit older too, of course she's mature enough now, but I think once she gets older, she'll realize how big of a moment this is in your life. And, she may
Oh
not
yeah.
sense it right now, but, I think, time will tell, I guess. But
Yeah.
so,
No,
yeah.
I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah.
So
Well, awesome,
but that's
dude.
it,
Man,
man.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm so glad we was able to do this. I mean, like I said, we've known each other forever, literally, and there's still so much stuff that we could tackle and dive into, and different upbringings. But once again, man, I just I'm thankful I've had you in my life. I'm thankful for our relationship, and I
Mhm.
mean, you were obviously always welcomed, in our house, and it's just I don't know, man. Like it's funny because you were just kind of talking about how like blessed you were, and I was just kind of thinking, it's like, man, it really does feel like Derrick has had a, I don't know how to say an easy life, but like I don't really know of any like really horrible things, I guess, that's happened to you. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just you've always kind of been taken care of. Things, you don't stress out too much about the little things, and you just kind of, I know you probably had some tough times when you were living in Indiana, with your job situation. I remember, we had a few conversations back
Yeah.
then, but where I mean, every man kind of gets to a point where you don't want to disappoint anybody or your family, or
Mhm.
it's something in every man and woman as well. You want to be successful, you want to be the provider
Right.
or whatever. But um I love you, dude, man. I'm proud of you. You've been
Yeah,
a
love
good
you too, buddy.
example to me all my life, and I'm very, very thankful for it.
Yeah. Well, the feeling is mutual. I want you to know
Yeah.
that. We've had a lot of great times. You know, um, you made a comment here a while back about, cousins being your first best friend. And I think that
Straight
really
up.
applies to our relationship.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Um, because, we can go a month without talking to each other, but as soon as we reconnect,
It's on.
yeah, I mean, it's just pick up where
there's
you left off,
there's no telling where we're gonna start or end.
Nope, nope.
It's
And
great,
it
man.
gets wild and crazy, but yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And, I'm glad you're a part of my life and that your family's a part of my life. It just makes for a great story. So
That's
love
right.
it.
That's right. All right, man. If you guys have made it to the end of this podcast, we really appreciate it. I hope you found my cousin's life story interesting. Is there's, like I said, there's a lot that we could dive into, but yeah, man, I appreciate it. If anybody else wants to get on here and kind of do something like this, it doesn't have to be as long. Obviously, Derrick and I have a lifetime of memories together. So, and him and I will do this again, and it may be about it may be about anything. It can literally be about anything. So,
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, man, thanks for listening, and thanks again, Derrick.
Thanks, Blake. Love you, buddy.
Love you, buddy.
See you.